Let's talk about the Hunter, shall we? We first got a look at this cutie when Supermassive revealed the Chapter 6 footage. We didn't see much of him, of course, just some limbs and a head splorching out of goop nodule on the wall, but the moment I saw him, I thought to myself, that looks familiar. And then a moment later, I started thinking, wait, was I right this whole time? So let's rewind a little and set some of this up. While we don't know exactly when pre-production started on Directive 8020, it was obviously a long time ago. The live-action footage seems to have been shot back in 2022. But it's safe to say that the planning started out quite some time before then. While we can't say for sure that a huge amount of prep work for Season 2 was done before Man of Medan came out, we have to assume that the game was well into production while Season 1 was being made. Before production upheavals and COVID delayed them, the original plan was for a new Dark Pictures game every 6 months or so. Medan in late summer 2019, Little Hope in spring 2020, House of Ashes that same Halloween, and then Devil and Me in early 2021. Obviously, that hasn't been officially confirmed, but assets made it into the Devil in Me, establishing that the game was originally going to be set in the spring of 2021 rather than the fall of 2022. It's the same asset that revealed a hidden plot detail, but that can wait for another video. The point is, we can be fairly certain that the original plan was for Season 1 of the Dark Pictures to start in late summer of 2019 and end in the spring of 2021. I don't know if they were hoping to rush into Season 2 that Halloween or planning to take a year between seasons, but I think it's reasonable to assume that the original plan was to release Directive 8020 no later than the first quarter of 2022. Why is that important? Simple. I think we've already seen 8020's Alien Goop Hunter in action, or at least something that was originally intended to be the Alien Goop Hunter. Which brings me, naturally, to Dead by Daylight. Obviously, we know that the good people of Behavior Interactive have partnered with Supermassive Games. Frank Stone came out in 2024, but it wasn't a simple or quick game to make, so the two companies had been working together for years before then. Again, no official announcements have been made, but given how long it takes to make these games and considering what's been reported, the partnership has to go back to at least 2021 or 2020. It's no small feat making an interactive movie that fits into the world of Dead by Daylight, after all. So if they were working with Supermassive all that time, was Frank Stone really the only thing they collaborated on? We know that Supermassive has been interested in getting their characters into other games. We need to look no further than questionable multiplayer first-person Pac-Man game Dark Deception for proof of that, with its House of Ashes DLC featuring Jason, Salim, and monsters running around in mazes. I really have to play that at some point, but every time I load up the game I get so dispirited. But my own issues with first-person Pac-Man games aren't the point here. What I'm saying is that we know that Supermassive has a history of licensing its characters to other games, and also that Dead by Daylight is the #1 destination for licensed horror characters. The two companies collabed on Frank Stone, of course, but isn't it likely that Supermassive would be very interested in seeing one of their villains turn up in Dead by Daylight? But which one would it be? Obviously, the Wendigos and Werewolves are out the window immediately, as the rights to both characters are tied up with their publishers, Sony and 2K. So Dark Pictures character then, but which one? There's not really anyone suitable in Medan, and while the monsters in Little Hope are spectacular in their design and execution, the fact that all but one of them are ploddingly slow and lumbering beasts, one of them is literally wrapped in chains and wiggles around the ground, means they couldn't really fit in with the mechanics of Dead by Daylight. I could see zombies or bat monsters from House of Ashes, of course, but they'd already been licensed to mazes and monsters. So there's no exclusivity there. And yes, obviously Dead by Daylight has Leatherface and Michael Myers, and they each have their own game. But crucially, Dead by Daylight got to those games first. Yes, I'd love to see Dumet in there, but I'm notably more obsessed with him than most people. Which brings us, naturally, to Directive 8020 and the Hunter. Now, this character would have been designed during the early stages of the game's development. Its look, its abilities, the whole enchilada would have been available to pitch years ago. So what if that happened? What if Supermassive pitched a Directive 8020 crossover with Dead by Daylight like 5 years ago? The thing is, I think they did. In the fall of 2022, we got a look at the first teaser for Directive 8020, with the Carter message and the flashes of a goop-filled hallway. In early 2023, we got our first hits at End Transmission, the Singularity's Dead by Daylight chapter. What's important to remember here is that when it was first announced, we had no idea what the plot of Directive 8020 was, other than it involved purple goop, someone being blasted into space, and someone going nuts and attacking someone else. So when the first images of the Singularity were revealed, I had a theory, based entirely on all of the purple goop all over the character art, that End Transmission was a surprise tie-in with Directive 8020, and the Singularity was going to be one of the villains of that game. As predictions go, it was proven wrong fairly quickly. End Transmission came out, it was original story, the Singularity had nothing to do with the mimicking goop that threatens the crew of the Cassiopeia, and the whole thing wasn't even set in Tau setting. The theory was dismissed, and I put it out of my mind. It's not like it's the first thing I've gotten wrong after all. I made a whole video out of bad guesses concerning the monsters in House of Ashes. Although, in the real world of the game, the vampire monsters are almost certainly the real-life origin of the mythology of ghouls, so technically I was only 99.9% wrong with my theories that time. The point is, End Transmission wasn't something I continued thinking about. That is, until I saw the Hunter and I realized, hey, maybe I wasn't as wrong as I thought I was? Let's consider these guys side by side. They have suspiciously similar silhouettes, don't they? Both of them have weird bulky legs, although the Hunter has double knees or a high ankle, if you prefer. While the Hunter doesn't have a blade arm the way the Singularity does, its huge three-fingered grabber arms do match the Singularity's left arm surprisingly closely. They have similar pinched-in waists, bulky torsos, and bulbous protruding eyes. And of course, we can't overlook the fact that they're both built mostly out of purple gunk. Beyond their similar looks, do they have anything else in common? Let's consider the Singularity's powers. He runs around the map, spreading pods of purple glorp places, and then through that glorp, he can watch the survivors run through the level, and if he spots one, he can immediately teleport to them, starting a chase. What about the infection in 8020? It spreads purple glorp all around the Cassiopeia, and it's apparently able to see, or at least somehow detect, if survivors are nearby, and when they are, it can extrude a Hunter right next to them to start a chase. Now, these aren't the exact same powers, obviously. The infection physically produces a Hunter, while the Singularity uses some kind of magical teleportation. But on a fundamental level, these abilities, spreading glorp around an area to look for prey, and then teleporting to the prey using that glorp, are uncannily similar. Which brings me to the final point of similarity. The maps. Now, most of the Singularity's map is an alien world full of lush alien greenery, with nothing particularly reminiscent of 8020, other than, the fact that the sky is purple, just like the atmosphere of Tau Ceti F. When you get inside the ship, though, the 8020 vibes start appearing in earnest. We've got purple glorp covering technology and containing people. The glorped hook looks straight out of 8020 Chapter 6, and check out this piece of concept art. Swap the Singularity for the Hunter and remove the hook, and couldn't you be easily tricked into thinking this was concept art of the overrun Cassiopeia? Obviously, none of this is concrete proof. But, wow, are there a lot of connections? So is it possible that this really happened? If so, it probably went something like this. Originally, they'd planned to have a crossover sometime after Directive 8020's launch. Maybe the first conversation suggested that 8020 is going to launch in Halloween 2022, with the Dead by Daylight chapter a couple of months later. But after COVID, it became clear that they're not going to be hitting those targets, and plans start to change. They think maybe 8020 is going to be coming out in 2023 and start planning for the crossover to happen then. Dead by Daylight pencils it into their release schedule and gets to work on the map and the characters. But then it becomes abundantly clear that 2023 isn't going to happen either. And Behavior Interactive has a problem. An 8020 crossover doesn't make sense years before the game comes out, but they still need a new chapter for that release window, and they've already started building the 8020 content. That would mean they agreed to scrap the collab, with Behavior now free to do whatever they wanted with the character and the work. But since they were already so far along on the Glorp Hunter, they could only change so much without having to start over from scratch. So it became a technological threat rather than an alien biological one, and it transformed into a cyborg rather than a creature of pure glorp, but in many ways, huge similarities remained. Is this what happened? Obviously, we can't know for sure unless someone confirms it for us. But wow, does it seem like this is the secret history behind the Singularity and his End Transmission chapter? Hopefully we're going to get confirmation someday. But until then, I've been the Hidden Object Guru. Thanks for watching. If you had a good time and you'd like to see more, there's buttons coming up to help with that. Questions, comments, your own theories about Directive 8020's appearance in Dead by Daylight, go in the comments section below the video. Play my game Clown in the Woods on itch.io for free. We'll see you back here for more 8020 videos as information allows. But until then, I'll say that's right. Au revoir.